let's get to know your member of Congress, whether it's a new member or an old member you want to take a fresh look at. And then also, what is it that influences them? You all know me, Amy Bennett, Director of Congressional Lobby Days and Liaisons. There I am with far shorter hair. And learning goals for today. Have a fresh set of eyes to learn about our new member and our returning member. How do we do power mapping is a term that someone in CCL came up with. I think it's great to identify the key people who influence your member. What's the most useful information to share? And that depends on your situation, how and when to share information. Timing's everything. And remembering that a foundation of trust opens the door for us to really make some stronger asks to our member if they are already trusting us. So let's say you have a freshman, meaning a new member of Congress. Keep in mind that they may have very, very limited legislative experience. We have people who come from different walks of life who become members of Congress, doctors, community, people who are involved in the community but may not have ever held a city council seat even. So be aware of that. Those who are new to this are going to be very cautious, and be aware that they might be undecided on how they feel about climate policy in general. That gives us an opening to become the trusted educator, but they may not be ready to give you a lot of feedback right away. So it's important that we listen, allow them to express to us where they're at as a new member of Congress, and rather than pushing them towards, oh, sign on right now or tell me how you feel, give them a chance to get to know us and to build that trust so that then they know that we're a trusted source. Returning members, I was really not aware of the fact that the elections could change things so much. I was speaking with Ben in our DC office, and he mentioned, don't assume that you can pick up from where you were last year. Things change. Elections and the events of the past can change the strategies in these offices and their thinking. And the member of Congress might be recalibrating where they are on an issue. So to build a bio, and by that I mean add to what you already know about your member. That might be a way that you keep information on a Google Doc. You don't necessarily have to do this. You can delegate it to one of your chapter members who likes doing research. And this is not the same. This is not building onto the actual document that we have on community, where we have a limited resource document on your member of Congress. This would be something that you could create separate from that with some of the details and things that you're picking up on your member with your local set of eyes and your chapter's set of eyes. I do have these media resources available. It's on the liaison page. There's also going to be this link available to you in the slides, and I will share the slides. But I also wanted to share how to spot fake news. When you're doing research on your member, it's really important to be aware that sometimes we end up on sites that we think are reliable and they may not be. So consider the source. I always like to check the About Us tab. I love to look for who's on their board of directors, where's their contact information. If too much of that is hidden, that's a red flag. Also, you want to check the author. Is that a real person? Is that someone who has credibility and a background? Check the date. I've discovered things on Facebook, of course we all do, or not all of us, but many of us are on Facebook. And I find often things are posted by someone who thinks it just happened yesterday and it happened 4 years ago. So check the date of anything that you're looking at. Now, this is more difficult. Check your biases. This is hard to do, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, taking yourself out of your particular viewpoint. I don't have any magic on that, but to be aware of it is maybe the first step. Read beyond the headlines. Headlines are often put out there to grab your attention, and they're definitely not the whole story. Also check the supporting sources. There's a lot of information out there, especially on Facebook, but other places too, that was meant to be a joke. So be sure you know if it is or isn't. And something that I've learned to do is check with the experts. Even though a lot of our libraries are closed due to the pandemic, a lot of those reference librarians are available by phone or email. I know my local library, they're available. So it's quite nice that they are. Building a bio, what are you looking for? Personal background and interests. Voting record is very important. The committee assignments is very, very important. This is where your member is doing most of their work. It is often where a lot of their passion lies and their expertise and where their priorities lie. So if you go to house.gov or senate.gov, depending on your member, you can look up those committees that you find out your member is on, and then also watch the hearings. If they have hearings, they're often kind of long, but you can usually scroll through them and hear what your member has to say. There are some real insightful things we've seen by watching those hearings. The members, of course, have their regular house.gov or senate.gov sites, and almost all of them that I've ever found always have their campaign sites up and running year in and year out. They have, and you can find members and donor and endorsements on those. Some of the sites that you might find, are listed in the media list for donors and endorsers, are sources such as Open Secrets and Ballotpedia. Do check their social media site as well as their house.gov or senate.gov site. They have in a way, they'll brag on their press release page or on their Facebook page. They'll share what they're most proud of and what they've been doing. So watch for that. What else? District and DC staffers. You can learn about those staffers, and they're often on LinkedIn, and you can find out where they went to school, what their past jobs were. It's pretty insightful. And as a liaison, you have access to past meeting notes, the confidential notes that we send out quarterly. And you also want to know all the different parts of your districts. So have a link there to the US Census and labor statistics, looking at your entire district. Where I live, I know my little community, but I don't necessarily know the whole district unless I go and research it. So you want to know, where are those other constituents that your members paying attention to? What's the racial breakdown? Where's the urban and rural split? Who are the employers in the district? Who are the industries? What's the housing and education data? Again, past election margins are really helpful to know how much they won by, and also who are their swing voters. And how do you map those influencers? This really means, being observant in many ways. Watch for articles or photos in the newspaper. Some of your local newspapers can have a lot of information. Who are the community leaders and donors that they're photographed with? Who are the employers and businesses that they're seen with? Where are they showing up? At Chamber of Commerce meetings? Are they giving presentations places? And then find out, what does your member care about? What are the constituent issues that seem to be getting a lot of attention? Again, what are they most proud of in the district? And then about personal interest and hobbies. For instance, what if they're a trout fisherman? They might be very sensitive to the impacts of climate change if that's one of their hobbies, or if they're a sports fisherman. That's just one example. And for that power mapping, what media do they read? This might mean that when you're on a Zoom call with your member or with the staffer, that you're kind of watching for what's posted behind them in the Zoom call, or if you can even see their desk, what newspapers are they reading. You might even ask the staffers, what media is the member paying attention to? And again, what do they post on social? What legislators or party leaders do they spend a lot of time with? You might check out, who are they co-sponsoring bills with? This also may tie into their committee work, so watch for where they're a co-sponsor or an initial sponsor of a bill. Another thing to watch for, especially watching the staffer-member relationship, what's their management style? How do they manage the office, and are they casual? Are they more formal? Do you think you can learn from the staffer what kind of information makes it up the food chain to the member and what doesn't make the cut? So that will be really helpful for you in terms of sharing information. And take a fresh look. Be open to rebooting your relationship if you feel like you haven't been learning a lot from the staffer hasn't been sharing a lot with you, you're just not getting the information. But also consider, for instance, this is an example. If you're liberal and your member leans conservative, consider bringing on a conservative co-liaison or a member of your chapter that leans a little more towards the middle, to see if they can join the meeting, help the staffer and the member kind of find that common ground and possibly observe something that you might have missed. They might be able to be a second set of eyes for you. So we know what we want, right? Climate legislation. Um, and what they want is the thing that you're trying to learn so that you can find that sweet spot in the middle, because that's where you want to share information. That's what you want to learn about, and that's where you have the influence. Initially, if you have a new member who's in that category of really brand spanking new, you do want to take care not to overwhelm them. Introduction to CCL, obviously you want to be introduced as the liaison if you're the liaison. CCL lobby events, let them know we're planning our events now for the year. And as we always do in a meeting, we let them know that we support the Energy Innovation Act. So initially you might just give an overview and then wait until you hear what kind of details they need filled in. Again, I'm talking about these initial introductions here, because certainly they're going to have questions as you get into more meetings. And the other thing that's important for them to know is that there is the Climate Solution Caucus, one in the House and one in the Senate. And do they know anyone who is on it that they can chat with and share their questions with as well? While you're trying to develop your relationship and become that trusted messenger, there may be people on one of those caucuses that they can also talk with. Reports and studies, the Yale climate opinion data, the household impact study, those both drill down on specific district information, which House members love. The Columbia study, which we just heard from Noah Kaufman about. And then one of the common questions that come up maybe a little further down the road is, how does that dividend get delivered? So there are some resources for you. And then as you're sharing things, figure out what the gaps in their knowledge are. What's relevant to them? What are their priorities? How can you match up knowing their priorities and knowing where their gaps in knowledge are to show them that you can be a resource and help them day in and day out? Can you bring in those trusted messengers? If you've mapped out who influences them, can you build a relationship with them, or someone in your chapter build a relationship with them and bring them into meetings, share endorsements? And then we know timing is everything. So when can you share things? Usually once they've had a chance to talk, they're a little more open to hearing what we have to say. The times that we often share are during our monthly touches, where you're just checking in with a member, but often we'll send an agenda now ahead of the meeting. We might share a specific resource during a meeting, or it may be in the follow-up. And in fact, if we don't get to cover something in a meeting, it's a great excuse for another meeting or a follow-up friendly touch. Get to know the limits of what they can absorb, so that you're not just telling them something that they're going to forget, because they've probably got 10 meetings every day or 12 meetings every day. So be aware of the volume of what they can absorb. Wrapping it up is the relationship comes first, so you can have that trust. When you have that trust, it's easier to ask or bring up the harder topics. Using fresh eyes, be aware of your biases, reliable resources, identify those influencers, maybe find out if anybody in your chapter knows any of them, what's most useful, what do they need the most, and plan how and when to share it.